I'll spend a few minutes and talk about a perspective referred to as project challenge. Consider a situation where unfortunately, you happen to have been given the responsibility for a project which just happens to be late. The current expected completion date for this project is later than the expected deadline, creating a schedule gap. In response to this, there are a number of options that are probably available, and we'll think through a couple of them at the moment. So, an easy option is typically to go ahead and have people on the project work overtime, which adds to the labor quantity, which should bring the expected completion date back in line with the deadline. Of course, working overtime also usually adds to cost. Now, this is an option that typically makes sense if the expected completion date isn't too far out of line. Though if it's extremely far out of line and people would have to work overtime for months, then it's more than not likely that extended overtime after some delay would lead to fatigue, which would actually reduce the labor productivity and therefore have a negative impact on the completion date. So that while working overtime might be a short-term fix, it's not a long-term fix. So, considering that the situation is one where the people on the project would have to work overtime for a long time, maybe the answer is to go ahead and add resources to increase the labor quantity, though realizing that adding resources will also increase the cost of the project. Now, this also appears to be an easy fix in terms of, you just find people and hire them and add them to the resources on the project. Though if you think about it a bit, what's the likelihood that you can find resources that are up to speed on the aspects of the project? I mean, if there are simple tasks on the project, you can probably just hire people that know how to do it. Though if it's some complex undertaking, it's usually unlikely that you can find resources that are really up to speed that can come on the job and be productive the next day. So what happens is that adding resources in the short term actually decreases the labor quantity and has a negative impact on the expected completion date, so that it's appropriate that one know if that's likely to happen, because if you don't consider that aspect of the relationships and you simply add resources and things slow down, then you could go into a panic. It's appropriate to realize that you add resources, it has a negative impact in the short term, though in the longer term, after some delay and the resources are up to speed, they do actually add to the labor productivity and therefore move the completion date in. So here are a set of relationships associated with a project schedule that's out of whack and needs to be brought back into alignment. And there are other aspects of this that you might consider. What influence might motivation be used to employ or to have an influence on the expected completion date? So, and there are other things that you might consider. So you could take this model and you could extend it. And if you do, I'd very much like to hear about it. You might also take a look at another perspective that will get done relatively shortly called Credit Never Happened. Now, if you're not currently following the Perspectives project, you can drop by systemswiki.org, and there are directions there for how to go ahead and follow this Kumu project as it continues to unfold in the future. Perspectives, the foundation of understanding and insights for effective action. I know, it's a mouthful, but that's the title that I finally came up with. So I'll see you shortly in another video. Bye.